They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes the universe has its own twisted sense of timing. Sometimes vengeance arrives steaming hot, delivered on a silver platter before you've even had time to process the initial betrayal. My name is Jake Anderson, and 18 months ago, I was just another mid-level marketing manager grinding away at Summit Solutions, a boutique consulting firm in downtown Des Moines. I had dreams, ambitions, and what I foolishly believed was job security. I thought loyalty meant something. I thought competence was rewarded. I was wrong about a lot of things back then. But I was right about one thing. Karma doesn't forget an address. The email arrived at 4:47 p.m. on a dreary October Tuesday, marked with the corporate kiss of death. Urgent. Please report to HR immediately. No context, no warning, just the digital equivalent of a guillotine invitation. I'd been at Summit Solutions for 3 years, steadily climbing from junior associate to senior marketing manager. My campaigns had generated millions in revenue. My client retention rate was the highest in the company. Just last month, CEO William Henderson had personally commended my work on the Prairie Industries account during the quarterly all-hands meeting. "Jake, you're exactly the kind of innovative thinking this company needs," he'd said, his perfectly veneered smile gleaming under the conference room lights. "People like you are our future." Apparently, their future had an expiration date. I straightened my tie and walked the gauntlet to HR, past the concerned glances of my colleagues. Mary from accounting gave me a sympathetic wince. Bob from IT avoided eye contact entirely. The office felt like a funeral parlor where I was both the deceased and the only one who didn't know it yet. Dorothy Miller, our stone-faced HR director, was waiting with 2 manila folders and the demeanor of someone about to perform a medical amputation. Beside her sat Henderson himself, his earlier warmth replaced by the cold efficiency of a corporate executioner. "Jake, please have a seat," Dorothy began, her voice carrying all the warmth of a parking ticket. "We'll make this brief." I sat, my mind racing through possibilities. Budget cuts? Restructuring? Had I missed some crucial deadline? After careful consideration, she continued, reading from a script she'd clearly delivered before. "Summit Solutions has decided to terminate your employment effective immediately." The words hit like a physical blow. "I'm sorry, what?" Henderson leaned forward, his expression carefully neutral. "Jake, this isn't personal. Market conditions have forced us to make some difficult decisions about our staffing structure. But the Prairie Industries account will be transitioned to other team members," Dorothy interrupted, sliding the first folder across the desk. "Here's your separation agreement. You'll receive 2 weeks severance pay, and we'll provide a neutral reference for future employment opportunities." 2 weeks. After 3 years of 60-hour weeks, missed family dinners, and postponed vacations. After generating enough revenue to probably fund their next corporate retreat to Kansas City. "This doesn't make sense," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "My performance reviews have been excellent. The clients love me. Just last month." "Jake," Henderson's voice carried a warning edge. "I understand this is disappointing, but the decision is final. We need you to clean out your desk and return all company property before leaving today." The second folder contained the real kick to the gut, a non-disclosure agreement and a non-compete clause that would effectively blacklist me from working with any of their competitors for 18 months. "Sign it, or forfeit the meager severance pay." I signed. What choice did I have? The walk back to my desk felt like a perp walk. Security materialized from nowhere. Apparently, they'd been briefed before I was. I had 15 minutes to pack 3 years of my professional life into a cardboard box, while my former colleagues pretended to be deeply absorbed in their work. As I cleared out my drawer, I found the letter. It was from my grandfather's estate attorney, dated 6 months ago. In all the chaos of work, I'd completely forgotten about it. Something about inherited property that required my attention. I'd kept meaning to call the lawyer back, but there had always been another deadline, another crisis, another fire to put out. I slipped the letter into my jacket pocket and finished packing. The elevator ride down felt eternal. In the lobby, I caught a glimpse of the company directory. Summit Solutions occupied floors 8 through 11 of the Madison Building, one of downtown Des Moines' premier commercial addresses. The brass nameplate gleamed like a monument to everything I was losing. Outside, the October rain had started, because of course it had. I stood on the sidewalk, clutching my cardboard box, watching through the floor-to-ceiling windows as my former life continued without me. My replacement was probably already being interviewed. That night, alone in my West Des Moines apartment with a bottle of bourbon and a growing sense of betrayal, I finally called the number on the estate attorney's letter. Mr. Anderson, the lawyer's voice was warm despite the late hour. I've been trying to reach you for months. About your grandfather's bequest, we really need to discuss the Madison Building situation. I nearly dropped the phone. I'm sorry, did you say the Madison Building? Yes, sir. The commercial property downtown. Your grandfather owned it outright, and according to his will, it passes to you. We've been managing it through a property management company, but there are some decisions that require the owner's direct input. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor. The law office of Thompson and Associates occupied a corner suite in a historic brick building near the Des Moines Farmers Market. Charles Thompson himself was a silver-haired gentleman who looked like he'd been handling estates since the Eisenhower administration. Your grandfather was quite the businessman, he said, spreading documents across his mahogany desk. He purchased the Madison Building in 1987 for what would be considered a song by today's standards. Real estate was his passion. I stared at the deed in disbelief. According to the paperwork, I now owned a 15-story commercial building in the heart of Des Moines Business District. The same building where, until yesterday, I'd been unceremoniously fired. The building generates approximately $1.8 million annually in rental income, Thompson continued. Your grandfather's instructions were very specific. The property was to remain in family hands, managed conservatively, with tenant relationships prioritized over maximum profit extraction. Who's been managing it? Prairie Property Management. They've done excellent work, though they've been waiting for your input on several matters. Most pressing is the lease renewal for your anchor tenant. My blood chilled. Which tenant would that be? Thompson consulted his notes. Summit Solutions. They occupy floors 8 through 11. Their current lease expires at the end of this month, and they're requesting a renewal. Quite generous terms. Actually, they're offering a 15% increase over current rates. The irony was so perfect it felt scripted. 24 hours ago, I'd been terminated without cause. Now I held the power to evict my former employer entirely. What's the timeline on this decision? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Well, technically, you could make the decision immediately. As owner, you have full discretion over tenant selection and lease terms. Though I should mention, Summit Solutions has been an exemplary tenant. Always paid on time, no complaints, minimal maintenance requests. Exemplary. Just like I'd been an exemplary employee. I'd like to meet with Prairie Property Management, I said. And I want to review all the building's financial records, tenant agreements, and maintenance logs. Of course, I'll arrange a meeting for tomorrow morning. That evening, I sat in my apartment staring at the deed, the termination letter, and a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a promotion that would never come. The Madison Building was worth approximately $32 million according to the latest appraisal. I was, quite literally, a multimillionaire landlord whose primary tenant had just fired me. The temptation to immediately serve Summit Solutions with an eviction notice was overwhelming. But grandfather's instructions echoed in my mind. Conservative management, prioritized tenant relationships. He built his wealth through patience and strategic thinking, not emotional reactions. I needed more information before making any moves. The next morning, I met with Rebecca Wilson from Prairie Property Management in the building's lobby. She was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who clearly knew the property inside and out. Mr. Anderson, it's wonderful to finally meet you, she said, shaking my hand. Your grandfather spoke of you often. He was incredibly proud of your career in marketing. If only she knew how that career had ended. Walk me through the building, I said. I want to understand everything. The tour was revelatory. The Madison Building was a beautiful Art Deco structure from the 1920s, recently renovated with modern amenities while preserving its historic character. Floors 1 to 2 housed a boutique law firm, 3 to 4 were occupied by a tech startup, 5 to 7 by an accounting firm, 12 to 13 by a medical practice, and floors 14 to 15 by a financial consulting group. And floors 8 to 11? My former workplace. Summit Solutions has been here for 7 years, Rebecca explained as we rode the elevator. They were actually one of your grandfather's favorite tenants. William Henderson always sent him a Christmas card, and they've never been late on rent. The elevator dinged softly as we passed the 8th floor. Through the glass doors, I could see the familiar logo, the reception desk where I'd checked in every morning for 3 years. My chest tightened with a mixture of anger and something that might have been homesickness. What's their current lease rate? I asked. $38 per square foot annually. They're requesting renewal at $44, which is actually above market rate for the area. They really want to stay. Of course they did. The Madison building was prestigious, well-maintained, and perfectly located. Any business would want to stay. What would happen if I declined their renewal? I asked carefully. Rebecca looked surprised. Well, they'd have to find new space. At this short notice, they'd probably have to pay premium rates somewhere else, assuming they could find suitable space at all. The downtown market is pretty tight right now. And what about our other tenants? Would losing Summit Solutions affect the building's value or stability? Not significantly. They occupy about 25% of our leasable space. We have a waiting list of potential tenants for quality space like that. Though I admit, the transition might be disruptive in the short term. We completed the tour on the roof, looking out over the Des Moines River and the Iowa State Capitol. The view was spectacular, the building was solid, and the financial numbers were excellent. I owned a piece of Des Moines skyline. Rebecca, I said finally, I need you to prepare 2 lease scenarios for Summit Solutions. One is their requested renewal at the increased rate. The other is a notice of non-renewal. She raised an eyebrow. Is there a problem with their tenancy? Let's just say I want to explore all options. How much notice are we required to give? 30 days, which puts us right at the deadline. But Mr. Anderson, may I ask why you're considering not renewing? They've been ideal tenants. I looked back toward the downtown skyline, where other buildings housed other companies that might fire loyal employees without warning. Sometimes being an ideal tenant isn't enough, I said. While Rebecca prepared the lease scenarios, I decided to conduct my own investigation into Summit Solutions' recent activities. If I was going to make a decision about their tenancy, I wanted the full picture. It didn't take long to uncover the truth, and it was worse than I'd imagined. Using my network of former colleagues and industry contacts, I learned that my termination hadn't been about budget cuts or market conditions. It had been about jealousy, politics, and a level of corporate backstabbing that would have impressed Machiavelli. The catalyst was the Prairie Industries account, the same one Henderson had publicly praised me for. According to my source in accounting, Prairie Industries had been so impressed with my work that they'd specifically requested me for a major expansion project worth $2.8 million in fees. The contract was set to be signed the week after I was fired. But here's where it got interesting. The expansion project wasn't just about marketing consulting. Prairie Industries wanted to acquire smaller agricultural companies and needed guidance on branding integration during mergers. It was exactly the kind of high-value, strategic work that could launch a consulting firm into the big leagues. The problem? My success had made certain people very nervous. Enter Jennifer Brooks, Summit's VP of Business Development and Henderson's rumored romantic interest. Jennifer had been with the company for 5 years, but had never landed a client as prestigious as Prairie Industries. My success on the account had made her look incompetent by comparison. According to my source, Jennifer had spent weeks poisoning Henderson against me, suggesting that I was planning to leave and start my own competing firm. She'd even fabricated evidence, misrepresented emails and conversations taken out of context, to make it appear that I was already recruiting Prairie Industries and other clients. The final nail in my coffin had been a fabricated conversation where Jennifer claimed I'd told a Prairie Industries executive that Summit's other account managers were second-rate and that the company would be nothing without my expertise. Henderson, blinded by his relationship with Jennifer and worried about losing face, had made the decision to fire me immediately. The non-compete clause was specifically designed to prevent me from working with Prairie Industries or any of my other successful accounts. But the real kicker? The day after my termination, Jennifer had swooped in to take over the Prairie Industries account personally. She was now positioning herself as the primary contact for the expansion project, claiming credit for the relationship I'd spent months building. It was a masterclass in corporate assassination, and I'd been completely blindsided. Sitting in my apartment that evening, I felt the full weight of the betrayal. This wasn't just about losing a job. It was about having my reputation systematically destroyed by lies and manipulation. Jennifer Brooks had stolen my work, my relationships, and my future, all while convincing Henderson that I was the villain. The next morning, I called Rebecca Wilson. I've made my decision about Summit Solutions, I said. I want to proceed with the non-renewal notice. Are you certain? This seems quite sudden. I'm certain, but I want to handle the notification personally. That's unusual. Typically, we send formal written notice through our legal department. This situation calls for a personal touch. There was a pause. Mr. Anderson, is there something I should know about your relationship with this tenant? I looked out my apartment window toward downtown, where the Madison building rose like a monument to unexpected justice. Let's just say it's complicated. I scheduled the meeting for 10 a.m. on a Friday, exactly 1 week after my termination. The setting was perfect, the executive conference room on the 14th floor of the Madison building with panoramic views of the city and the Des Moines River. I'd informed Rebecca that I wanted to meet with Summit's leadership personally to discuss their lease renewal. She'd contacted William Henderson directly, explaining that the new building owner preferred face-to-face negotiations for major tenants. What they didn't know was that the new building owner was someone they'd recently fired. I arrived early, choosing a seat at the head of the conference table with my back to the windows. The morning light would make it difficult for them to see my face clearly when they first entered. I wanted to control the moment of recognition. At exactly 10 a.m., Rebecca escorted them in. William Henderson, Jennifer Brooks, and their company attorney, Michael Davis, a nervous-looking man I recognized from corporate meetings. "Gentlemen," Henderson began in his practiced schmooze voice, extending his hand as he approached the table. "Thank you so much for meeting with us. We're excited to discuss our continued partnership with." His words died as I stood and turned to face him. The recognition hit like a physical blow. His face went through a fascinating sequence of expressions: confusion, recognition, disbelief, and finally, a kind of pale horror. Jennifer's reaction was even better. She actually took a step backward, her perfectly composed expression cracking like a shattered mask. "Hello, William. Jennifer." I kept my voice pleasant, professional. "Thank you for coming." The silence stretched like a taut wire. Michael Davis looked between us, clearly sensing the tension but not understanding its source. Rebecca, bless her, maintained perfect composure, though I caught the hint of a smile at the corner of her mouth. I don't understand," Henderson stammered. "Jake, what are you doing here?" "We were supposed to meet with the building owner about our lease renewal." I gestured to the chair across from me. "Please, have a seat. We have a lot to discuss." They sat like condemned prisoners approaching the electric chair. Jennifer's usual confidence had evaporated, replaced by something approaching panic. "Jake Anderson," I said formally, "owner of the Madison building. I believe you're here to discuss your lease renewal for floors 8 through 11. The implications hit Henderson like a tsunami. His carefully maintained tone seemed to fade before my eyes. "This is impossible," Jennifer finally found her voice. "You can't be the building owner. You were just a marketing manager?" I smiled. "Yes, until last Friday when you had me terminated without cause. Funny how life works out." Michael Davis leaned forward. "Mr. Anderson, if there's some sort of personal dispute here, perhaps we should." "Oh, there's no dispute," I interrupted gently. "This is purely a business discussion about lease renewal terms. Though I should mention that I've been doing some research into Summit Solutions' recent activities." I opened the folder I'd brought and spread several documents across the table, printouts of emails, financial records, and a detailed timeline of the events leading to my termination. "Fascinating reading," I continued. "Did you know that Prairie Industries specifically requested me for their expansion project? Worth $2.8 million in fees, I believe. They were quite disappointed to learn I was no longer with the company." Jennifer's face had gone completely white. "Jake, I can explain." "Please do. I'm particularly interested in this email thread where you suggested to William that I was planning to start a competing firm. Very creative fiction writing, Jennifer. You have a real talent for fabrication." Henderson was staring at the documents like they might burst into flames. "Jake, we made the decision based on the information we had at the time. Information that was completely fabricated." I leaned back in my chair. "But let's not dwell on the past. We're here to discuss the future of your lease agreement." Rebecca cleared her throat. "Mr. Anderson has reviewed your renewal request. Unfortunately, Summit Solutions' lease will not be renewed beyond its current expiration date." The words landed like a bomb in the quiet conference room. "You can't be serious," Henderson said, his voice cracking slightly. "Jake, I know you're angry, but this is our business location. We have clients, employees, infrastructure. All of which should have been considered before you decided to terminate a loyal employee based on lies and office politics." I kept my tone conversational. "Your lease expires in 17 days. I'd suggest you begin looking for alternative accommodations immediately." Jennifer finally exploded. "This is harassment. You can't evict us out of spite. I'm not evicting you out of spite, I replied calmly. I'm declining to renew your lease because I don't believe Summit Solutions demonstrates the kind of ethical business practices I want associated with my property. Michael Davis was frantically taking notes. Mr. Anderson, surely we can work something out. Perhaps increased rent or additional terms. My decision is final. The room fell silent except for the distant sound of traffic from the street below. Through the windows, I could see the Des Moines River flowing past, carrying fallen leaves toward the Mississippi. Jake, Henderson tried one more time, his earlier arrogance replaced by something approaching desperation. What do you want? What would it take to reconsider? I pretended to think about it. Well, there is one possibility. Hope flickered in his eyes. Name it. Full public acknowledgement that my termination was unjustified. A formal apology to be distributed to all clients and industry contacts. Immediate termination of Jennifer Brooks for costs. And payment of $400,000 in damages for the destruction of my professional reputation. Jennifer shot to her feet. That's extortion. No, I said pleasantly, that's justice. But don't worry, I'm not actually interested in any of those things. I just wanted to see if you had any sense of accountability whatsoever. I stood and gathered my papers. Your lease expires in 17 days. I trust you'll vacate the premises in good condition. Rebecca will coordinate the details. As I headed for the door, Henderson called after me. Jake, please. We can work this out. Be reasonable. I paused at the threshold and turned back. I was reasonable for 3 years. I was loyal, hardworking, and dedicated. And when you needed a scapegoat for Jennifer's ambitions, you threw me away like garbage. I smiled. Now you get to experience what it feels like to have your life disrupted without warning. The elevator ride down was the sweetest 30 seconds of my life. The news of Summit Solutions' forced relocation spread through Des Moines business community like wildfire. In a city where commercial real estate was competitive, the sudden displacement of a prominent consulting firm was big news. The initial media coverage was neutral, just standard business reporting about lease renewals and corporate relocations. But within days, the story took on a more interesting angle when someone leaked the connection between the new building owner and Summit's recently terminated marketing manager. The Des Moines Business Record ran the headline, "Fired employee becomes former company's landlord. Poetic justice or petty revenge?" The article was surprisingly balanced, but it opened floodgates. Local business blogs picked up the story, then regional media in Iowa City and Cedar Rapids, and finally national outlets hungry for a David versus Goliath narrative with a twist. I gave no interviews and made no public statements, which only fueled more speculation. Social media was divided between those who saw me as a wronged employee getting justified revenge and others who viewed the eviction as an abuse of power. Meanwhile, Summit Solutions was struggling to manage the crisis on multiple fronts. Finding new office space on short notice in downtown Des Moines proved nearly impossible. The few available spaces were either significantly more expensive, in less desirable locations, or required extensive renovation that would take months to complete. But their real problem was the Prairie Industries situation. 3 days after our conference room confrontation, I received an unexpected call from Robert Miller, Prairie Industries CEO. Jake, he said, I've been following the news about your situation with Summit Solutions. I wanted to reach out personally. Robert, good to hear from you. I hope the transition with Jennifer is going smoothly. There was a pause. Actually, that's why I'm calling. We've decided to put the expansion project on hold indefinitely. My heart skipped. May I ask why? Frankly, we've lost confidence in Summit's ability to execute at the level we require. Jennifer Brooks has made several concerning statements about the project scope, and when we requested the detailed strategic framework you developed, she couldn't produce it. Of course she couldn't, because it had never existed outside of our conversations and my personal notes that had been packed up with my belongings in that cardboard box. Moreover, Robert continued, the public relations situation around their lease dispute has raised questions about their business judgment and stability. We can't afford to associate with that kind of chaos during a sensitive expansion phase. I stayed silent, letting him continue. Jake, I want to be direct. Would you be interested in discussing this project independently? We were impressed with your work, and your recent change in circumstances might actually benefit everyone involved. The irony was exquisite. By destroying my employment at Summit, Jennifer had inadvertently freed me to compete for the very account she tried to steal. Robert, I'd be very interested in discussing that possibility. Excellent. I'll have my assistant set up a meeting. And Jake? Congratulations on your recent real estate acquisition. That's quite a story. After we hung up, I sat back in my chair and marveled at how quickly the tables had turned. Not only had I evicted my former employer, but I was now positioned to steal their biggest client. But Jennifer Brooks wasn't finished fighting. 2 days later, Rebecca called with disturbing news. Mr. Anderson, we have a problem. Summit Solutions is claiming they can't vacate by the lease expiration date. They're citing the Iowa Commercial Tenancy Act and claiming hardship circumstances. What kind of hardship circumstances? They're arguing that forcing them to relocate on short notice would cause irreparable harm to their business operations and employee welfare. They're requesting a 6-month extension while they search for suitable alternative space. I felt my jaw clench. Can they do that legally? It's complicated. They're also suggesting that your personal relationship with the company creates a conflict of interest that invalidates the non-renewal notice. Jennifer's fingerprints were all over this maneuver. She was trying to turn my advantage into a liability, using the legal system to buy time and create leverage. What are our options? We can fight it in court, but that could take months. In the meantime, they'd likely be allowed to remain in the building. Alternatively, we could negotiate some kind of compromise. The word compromise left a bitter taste in my mouth. After everything they'd done, the idea of giving Jennifer Brooks an inch was nauseating. No compromises, I said firmly. If they want to fight this legally, we'll fight. Get our best attorneys involved. Mr. Anderson, I should warn you, a protracted legal battle could be expensive and might generate negative publicity. Sometimes it's better to take a more pragmatic approach. But this wasn't about pragmatism anymore. It was about principle. Rebecca, do you know why my grandfather left me this building? I'm not sure I follow. He wrote me a letter that was in his safe deposit box. He said the building represented the American dream, the idea that hard work and integrity would eventually be rewarded. He wanted it to stay in family hands because he believed family values meant something. I paused, looking out at the Des Moines skyline. Jennifer Brooks embodies everything my grandfather despised about modern business culture. She's dishonest, manipulative, and willing to destroy other people's lives for personal gain. If I let her win this fight, I'm dishonoring everything my grandfather stood for. There was silence on the other end of the line. Understood, Mr. Anderson. I'll contact our legal team immediately. As I hung up the phone, I realized this battle was just beginning. Jennifer had made it personal when she fabricated evidence to get me fired. Now she was about to learn that some fights have consequences she never anticipated. The legal battle consumed the next 3 months of my life, but it also provided something I hadn't expected: clarity about who I really was and what I was capable of achieving. Summit Solutions hired Johnson, Patterson & Associates, one of Des Moines' most aggressive commercial litigation firms. Their strategy was simple: paint me as a vindictive ex-employee abusing his power as a landlord to pursue a personal vendetta. They filed a motion for emergency injunctive relief, claiming that forcing them to relocate would cause irreparable harm to their business and potentially result in significant job losses. Jennifer Brooks herself gave a deposition where she portrayed me as an unstable individual who had made threats against the company. The fabrications were breathtaking in their audacity. According to Jennifer's sworn testimony, I had frequently expressed dissatisfaction with company policies and had made statements suggesting I felt undervalued and overlooked for advancement. She claimed that during my final weeks at Summit, I had become increasingly hostile and erratic, and that my termination had been necessary to maintain a safe and productive work environment. Most damaging was her assertion that I had explicitly threatened to retaliate against the company if I were ever terminated, and that acquiring the building was part of a premeditated plan for revenge. Reading her deposition was like watching a masterclass in character assassination. Every interaction we'd had was recontextualized, every professional disagreement reframed as evidence of instability. She had turned 3 years of dedicated service into a psychological profile of a dangerous employee. But Jennifer had made one crucial mistake. She had underestimated the power of documentation. My legal team, led by the formidable Lisa Johnson, no relation to the opposing firm, had spent weeks gathering evidence to support our case. What they uncovered was damning. First, they obtained copies of all my performance reviews, client feedback forms, and internal communications. The picture that emerged was of a consistently high-performing employee with no disciplinary actions, no complaints from colleagues, and stellar client relationships. More importantly, They uncovered the email trail that Jennifer thought she had deleted. It turned out that Summit's IT department maintained comprehensive backups of all electronic communications. Through discovery, we obtained the original emails that Jennifer had manipulated to create her fictional narrative about my supposed disloyalty. The evidence was devastating. We could prove that Jennifer had selectively quoted from emails, removing context to create false impressions. We could show that conversations she claimed had occurred in person had actually taken place via email, with content that directly contradicted her testimony. But the smoking gun was a series of emails between Jennifer and William Henderson that revealed the real reason for my termination. In one particularly incriminating message, Jennifer wrote, "Jake is making me look incompetent with the Prairie Industries account. Clients specifically ask for him and act like I'm some kind of substitute. We need to find a way to neutralize his influence before he completely overshadows the rest of the team." Henderson's response was equally damning. "I understand your concerns. Maybe it's time to make some changes in the marketing department structure. We can't have one person becoming indispensable." The emails painted a clear picture. My termination had nothing to do with performance or budget constraints. It was a deliberate effort to eliminate a successful employee who threatened Jennifer's position and ego. During her deposition, when confronted with these emails, Jennifer's composure finally cracked. "That's taken out of context," she stammered. "Jake was undermining team cohesion by—" "Ms. Brooks," Lisa Johnson interrupted smoothly. "In this email dated September 15th, you wrote, and I quote, 'I don't care what it takes. I want him gone before the Prairie Industries expansion project launches.' How exactly is that taken out of context?" Jennifer's attorney objected, but the damage was done. The trial lasted 2 weeks, and it was a masterpiece of legal theater. Lisa Johnson systematically dismantled Jennifer's credibility while building an ironclad case for wrongful termination and fraudulent misrepresentation. The key moment came when Robert Miller from Prairie Industries testified about the circumstances surrounding their decision to withdraw from the expansion project. "We specifically requested Jake Anderson for this project," he stated clearly. "When Summit Solutions informed us he was no longer available and assigned Jennifer Brooks instead, we immediately noticed a decline in the quality of strategic thinking and project management." "Can you be more specific?" Lisa asked. Ms. Brooks couldn't answer basic questions about the strategic framework Jake had developed. When we asked for the detailed competitive analysis he'd prepared, she claimed it didn't exist. It became clear that she had no understanding of the work that had been done or the client's specific needs. "What was your company's response?" "We terminated the contract. We couldn't risk a $2.8 million project with someone who clearly wasn't qualified to manage it." The courtroom was silent as the implications sank in. Jennifer's scheme to steal my work had not only destroyed my career, it had cost Summit Solutions their biggest client. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. He found that Summit Solutions had failed to prove hardship circumstances and that their claims of retaliatory eviction lacked merit. More significantly, he ruled that the evidence suggested a pattern of unethical behavior by company leadership that justified the landlord's decision not to renew the lease. While this court cannot adjudicate employment disputes, Judge Thompson stated, the evidence presented suggests that Mr. Anderson's termination was based on fabricated evidence and personal animosity rather than legitimate business reasons. Under these circumstances, the property owner's decision to decline lease renewal appears reasonable and justified. Summit Solutions was ordered to vacate the premises within 30 days. But the real vindication came 3 days after the trial ended. William Henderson called me personally. "Jake," his voice was subdued, defeated, "I owe you an apology." I said nothing, letting him fill the silence. "I've been reviewing everything that happened, and I realize I made a terrible mistake. Jennifer, she manipulated the situation, and I was too blind to see it. And I'm letting her go. Effective immediately. I should have listened to you, should have investigated her claims more thoroughly. I let personal feelings cloud my judgment. It was a hollow victory. Jennifer Brooks' termination wouldn't restore the 3 months of unemployment, the damage to my reputation, or the stress of the legal battle. But it was an acknowledgement of the truth. "William," I said finally, "I appreciate the apology. But this isn't about Jennifer anymore. This is about the kind of leader you are and the kind of company you run. I know. I'm trying to make changes, to rebuild the culture here. If there's any way you consider—" "No," I said firmly. "That chapter of my life is closed. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment, the same apartment where I'd received the devastating termination call 4 months earlier, and marveled at how completely my life had changed. I owned a $32 million building. I had successfully evicted the company that wrongfully terminated me. I was about to sign a consulting contract with Prairie Industries that would pay more in 6 months than I'd earned in 2 years at Summit. But something was still missing. 3 weeks after Summit's forced evacuation, I was reviewing potential new tenants for floors 8 to 11 when Rebecca called with unexpected news. "Mr. Anderson, you're not going to believe this. We just received a lease application for the Summit space." "Already? That's fast. Who's the applicant?" "Brooks Consulting Group. They're requesting a 5-year lease for all 4 floors." I nearly dropped the phone. "Brooks? As in Jennifer Brooks?" "That's what it looks like." The application lists Jennifer Brooks as CEO and founder. They're offering $52 per square foot, which is significantly above market rate. The audacity was breathtaking. After everything that had happened, Jennifer was trying to lease the same space she'd just been evicted from, presumably planning to poach Summit's remaining clients and start her own competing firm. "Rebecca, please tell me this is some kind of joke." "I'm afraid not. The application appears legitimate. They've provided financial statements, references, and a detailed business plan. Legally, we have to consider all qualified applicants." My first instinct was to reject the application immediately. The idea of Jennifer Brooks operating her new business in my building was nauseating. But something made me pause. "Send me everything," I said. "I want to review their complete application." That evening, I spread Jennifer's business plan across my dining table and began reading. What I discovered was both infuriating and oddly impressive. Brooks Consulting Group was positioning itself as a boutique marketing and business development firm specializing in ethical, relationship-driven client service. The business plan specifically mentioned moving beyond the toxic corporate culture that prioritizes politics over performance. The hypocrisy was staggering, but the business model was sound. Jennifer had clearly learned from watching Summit's operations and was planning to target their former clients with promises of more personalized service. More interesting were the financial projections. According to her application, Brooks Consulting had already secured $1.5 million in first-year contracts. When I cross-referenced the client list with Summit's former accounts, I realized what had happened. Jennifer hadn't just been fired from Summit. She'd orchestrated a carefully planned exodus, taking several key clients and 2 senior consultants with her. It was a masterful theft of intellectual property and client relationships. William Henderson's company was being systematically dismantled by the very person whose manipulations had started this entire chain of events. The next morning, I made a decision that surprised even me. I called Rebecca and told her to schedule a meeting with Jennifer Brooks. "Mr. Anderson, are you sure that's wise? Given your history, how? Trust me on this. I want to hear her pitch personally." The meeting was scheduled for the following Friday in the same conference room where I delivered Summit's eviction notice. The symmetry was too perfect to resist. Jennifer arrived precisely on time, accompanied by a sharp-looking attorney and an accountant. She had clearly prepared for battle, but when she saw me sitting at the head of the table, her confidence wavered. "Jake," she said, attempting a professional tone, "thank you for agreeing to meet with us." "Jennifer, please, have a seat." She sat stiffly, her usual poise replaced by wary tension. "I suppose you're wondering why I'm here." "I'm wondering a lot of things. But let's start with this. After everything that's happened, you have the audacity to apply for space in my building." Her attorney leaned forward. "Mr. Anderson, my client is prepared to offer extremely competitive terms." I held up a hand. "I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to Jennifer." She met my gaze directly for the first time. "You want honesty? Fine. I need this space because it's perfect for what I'm building. The location, the prestige, the infrastructure, everything works. And yes, I know it's awkward given our history, but this is business." "Business," I repeated. "Like when you fabricated evidence to get me fired?" "I made mistakes," she said, her voice tightening. "I let competition and insecurity drive me to make poor decisions. But I've learned from that experience." "Have you?" "Because from where I sit, it looks like you've just upgraded from sabotaging colleagues to stealing entire companies." Her composure cracked slightly. "William made his own choices. I didn't force anyone to leave Summit." "No, you just poisoned the well so thoroughly that your former colleagues couldn't stand working there anymore." We stared at each other across the conference table, 2 people whose lives had become inexplicably intertwined through betrayal and revenge. "Jake," she said finally. I know you hate me. I know you think I'm everything wrong with corporate America. But I'm also very good at what I do, and I'm offering to pay you $208,000 more per year than Summit was paying. Money isn't everything, Jennifer. No, but it's something. And despite what you think of me personally, Brooks Consulting will be a successful business. We'll pay our rent on time, we'll maintain the space properly, and we'll add value to your building's reputation. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. There was something different about Jennifer now, a harder edge, but also a kind of desperate honesty that hadn't been there before. Tell me about your clients, I said. She looked surprised by the change of subject. What do you want to know? How did you convince them to leave Summit? Jennifer glanced at her attorney, who nodded. The truth? I told them exactly what happened. That Summit's leadership was unstable, that they'd fired their best performer out of jealousy, and that the company culture was toxic. And they believed you? They'd worked with you, Jake. They knew your value. When I explained how you'd been treated, they were disgusted. 3 of them called me within a week of your termination asking if I was planning to leave too. I felt an unexpected twist in my stomach. So you used my reputation to build your client base. I used the truth about what happened to you to show them what kind of company they were really dealing with. The irony was perfect. Jennifer had destroyed my career at Summit, but in doing so, she'd inadvertently created the evidence she needed to destroy Summit itself. Jennifer, I said slowly, do you know why I became successful at Summit? Because you're good at your job. Partly. But mostly because I understood something that you and William never did. Business is about relationships, not transactions. Clients don't buy services, they buy trust. She nodded carefully. I'm beginning to understand that. Are you? Because everything you've done suggests you see other people as obstacles to overcome or resources to exploit. Her face flushed. That's not fair. I made mistakes, but I'm trying to build something better now. By stealing Summit's clients? By offering those clients a better alternative to a toxic work environment. I stood and walked to the windows, looking out at the Des Moines River. The water was flowing steadily eastward, carrying fallen autumn leaves toward distant destinations. Jennifer, I'm going to make you an offer. She tensed. I'm listening. I'll approve your lease application on one condition. What condition? I turned back to face her. You publicly acknowledge what really happened with my termination. A full statement to the business community explaining that I was fired based on fabricated evidence and personal animosity. You take responsibility for your role in destroying my reputation. The conference room fell silent. Jennifer's attorney was frantically taking notes, clearly calculating the legal implications. That's professional suicide, Jennifer said quietly. Maybe. Or maybe it's the first honest thing you've done in your career. Jake, I can't. Then we have nothing more to discuss. I moved toward the door, but Jennifer's voice stopped me. Wait. I paused, not turning around. If I do this, if I make that statement, what guarantee do I have that you won't find some other way to sabotage my business? You don't, I said simply. Just like I had no guarantee that being honest and hardworking would protect me from being fired. Sometimes you have to take risks and trust that doing the right thing will work out. I left the conference room without another word. Jennifer Brooks' public statement was released 3 days later. It appeared simultaneously on her company website, LinkedIn, and in a paid advertisement in the Des Moines Business Record. The headline read, Setting the Record Straight, an Apology and Acknowledgement. The statement was more comprehensive than I had expected. I am writing to address recent events surrounding my departure from Summit Solutions and the formation of Brooks Consulting Group. It has come to my attention that my actions over the past year have caused significant harm to a former colleague, and I believe it is important to set the record straight. Jake Anderson was terminated from Summit Solutions based on concerns about his loyalty and commitment to the company. I now acknowledge that these concerns were unfounded and that I played a significant role in creating false impressions about his character and intentions. Specifically, I provided company leadership with selectively edited communications and mischaracterized conversations in a way that portrayed Mr. Anderson as disloyal and potentially harmful to company interests. These characterizations were inaccurate and unfair. The truth is that Jake Anderson was an exemplary employee whose success and client relationships threatened my own position within the company. Rather than addressing my professional shortcomings through improved performance, I chose to undermine a colleague's reputation through manipulation and misrepresentation. Mr. Anderson's termination was unjustified and based on false information that I provided. His subsequent legal victory against Summit Solutions was entirely warranted, and I take full responsibility for the circumstances that led to that conflict. I am committed to building Brooks Consulting Group on a foundation of honesty, integrity, and ethical business practices. This statement represents my commitment to accountability and my determination to do better in the future. I sincerely apologize to Jake Anderson for the harm I caused to his reputation and career. I also apologize to my former colleagues at Summit Solutions who were affected by the toxic environment my actions helped create. The response was immediate and dramatic. The Des Moines business community exploded with discussion about corporate ethics, workplace manipulation, and the courage required to make such a public admission. Business blogs analyzed the statement for weeks, with most commentators praising Jennifer's honesty while questioning whether her acknowledgement was genuine or simply calculated damage control. But the real impact was on her business. 3 of Jennifer's new clients immediately terminated their contracts, citing concerns about working with someone who admitted to professional misconduct. 2 potential clients withdrew from negotiations. Her carefully planned exodus from Summit began to look like professional suicide. I watched the fallout with mixed emotions. Part of me felt vindicated. Jennifer was finally experiencing consequences for her actions. But another part of me felt something unexpected: respect for her willingness to tell the truth despite the cost. A week after the statement was published, Jennifer called me directly. "Jake, I need to ask you something." "I'm listening." "Did you know this would happen? When you demanded the public statement, did you know it would destroy my business?" I considered lying, but decided on honesty. "I thought it might." There was a long pause. "So this was just another form of revenge?" "Maybe. Or maybe it was a test." "A test of what?" "Whether you were capable of actually changing, or if you were just saying whatever you thought I wanted to hear." Another pause. "And what's your conclusion?" "I'm still deciding." That afternoon, I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I called Jennifer back. "Your lease application is approved." "Jake, what?" "Brooks Consulting Group can move into floors 8 to 11 next month. Standard 5-year lease, with the terms you proposed." "I don't understand. After everything that's happened, after my business is falling apart, why would you?" "Because you told the truth when it cost you everything. That's the first genuinely impressive thing you've done since I've known you. But my clients, my reputation, will recover if you're actually committed to building something better. Or they won't, and you'll fail. Either way, you'll have earned whatever happens next." The next 6 months were a fascinating study in redemption and transformation. Brooks Consulting Group struggled initially, just as I had predicted. Jennifer lost several more clients and had to lay off one of her consultants. For a while, it looked like the company might not survive its first year. But something interesting happened. The clients who stayed were impressed by Jennifer's honesty and commitment to ethical practices. Word spread that Brooks Consulting was different, a firm that prioritized integrity over profit, relationships over transactions. Slowly, carefully, Jennifer began rebuilding. New clients came through referrals from existing ones. Her reputation evolved from the woman who destroyed Jake Anderson's career to the consultant who had the courage to admit her mistakes and change. Meanwhile, my own consulting practice was thriving. The Prairie Industries project had led to 3 more major clients, and I was earning more in a month than I used to make in 6 months at Summit. But the most unexpected development was my relationship with the Madison building itself. What had started as an instrument of revenge had become something much more meaningful. I found myself genuinely invested in the building's success, in creating a community of tenants who shared values of integrity and excellence. I established the Madison Business Ethics Initiative, providing reduced-rate office space to startups and small businesses committed to ethical practices. I created networking events for tenants, fostering collaboration and mutual support. The building became known as a place where honest businesses could thrive, where success was measured not just in profit but in positive impact. And yes, Jennifer Brooks was part of that community. We weren't friends, too much had happened for that. But we had developed a professional respect built on shared experience and hard-won wisdom. 6 months after her public statement, Jennifer knocked on my office door. "Jake, do you have a minute?" "Sure. What's on your mind?" She sat across from my desk, looking more relaxed than I'd seen her in years. "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For forcing me to confront who I was. For giving me the chance to become someone better." I leaned back in my chair. "How's business?" "Good. Different than I planned, but good. We're smaller than I originally projected, but our clients trust us completely. That's worth more than I realized." "And William? How's Summit doing?" Jennifer's expression darkened slightly. "Not well. They lost 3 more major accounts last month." The company culture never recovered from everything that happened. William's talking about selling. That's unfortunate. Is it? Jake, be honest with me. Do you regret any of this? The eviction, the legal battle, forcing me to make that statement. I thought carefully before answering. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that you put us both in a position where these extremes were the only path to justice. But no, I don't regret fighting back. Even though it nearly destroyed my business? Your business survived because you chose honesty over self-preservation. If you'd chosen differently, it would have failed anyway, just more slowly and with less dignity. Jennifer nodded slowly. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. About the difference between success and achievement. What's the difference? Success is winning. Achievement is becoming someone worthy of winning. It was perhaps the wisest thing I'd ever heard her say. The Madison Building's annual Tenant Appreciation Dinner was held on a perfect Iowa evening in late spring. The rooftop garden was in full bloom. The Des Moines River reflected the sunset like a golden ribbon, and the Iowa State Capitol dome gleamed in the distance. I stood at the edge of the garden, watching my tenants mingle and network. The law firm on floors 1 to 2 was celebrating their biggest case victory ever. The tech startup on 3 to 4 had just secured Series B funding. The accounting firm had won a prestigious award from the Iowa Society of CPAs. And on floors 8 to 11, Brooks Consulting Group was thriving. Jennifer approached me as I watched the sunset, carrying 2 glasses of wine. For the landlord, she said, offering me a glass. For the tenant, I replied, accepting it. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city lights begin to twinkle in the gathering dusk. Jake, Jennifer said finally, do you ever wonder what would have happened if things had gone differently? If I hadn't gotten you fired, if you'd never inherited the building? Sometimes, I admit it. But I think we both ended up where we needed to be. Even though it took a war to get here? Sometimes wars are necessary. Sometimes they're the only way to clear the ground for something better to grow. She nodded thoughtfully. I got a call from William last week. Oh, he's closing Summit. Couldn't recover from the client losses and reputation damage. He wanted to know if I'd be interested in buying the company name and remaining assets. What did you tell him? That some things are better left buried. She paused. He also wanted me to ask if you'd consider meeting with him. He has something he wants to say. I considered this. What do you think? I think forgiveness is harder than revenge, but more powerful in the long run. It was another surprisingly wise observation from the woman who had once tried to destroy my career. Maybe, I said. We'll see. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, I found myself alone on the rooftop garden. The city stretched out below me, a glittering tapestry of ambition and dreams, success and failure, revenge and redemption. My phone buzzed with a text message from Robert Miller at Prairie Industries. Jake, we'd like to discuss expanding our consulting contract to include our Illinois operations. When can we meet? I smiled and typed back. I'll check my calendar and get back to you. Thanks for thinking of us. Us. When had I started thinking in terms of us? When had this building stopped being just property and started being a community? I looked up at floors 8 to 11, where the lights were still on in Brooks Consulting's offices. Jennifer was probably working late again, building something honest from the ashes of her former ambitions. Tomorrow, I would call William Henderson and arrange a meeting. Not because I had forgiven him, but because forgiveness was a choice that benefited the forgiver more than the forgiven. 2 years ago, I had been a fired marketing manager standing on a rainy sidewalk with a cardboard box and a heart full of rage. Tonight, I was the owner of a thriving commercial building, the founder of a successful consulting practice, and something I'd never expected to become, a catalyst for positive change in other people's lives. The universe, it turned out, had an even better sense of timing than I'd realized. As I locked up the building and headed home to my new house in West Des Moines, a beautiful colonial that my grandfather would have loved, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought me here. Betrayal had led to inheritance. Inheritance had enabled revenge. Revenge had forced accountability. And accountability had created the possibility of redemption. It wasn't the life I had planned, but it was the life I had built from the ruins of my former expectations. And it was good.